Hello and welcome back. So this is just the setup of the next project. The next project is a program. And I'm going to show you now what the final work would look like. First thing I will show you is how to set up the file, how to make a grid, how to flow in the tab using a style sheet. Once you get to the style sheet, please take notes and be very conscious of how a style sheet works. It's something that if you're going to be in design or get design job, you need to know. So people that might hire you will always look to make sure that you know how to use a style sheet. Show you exactly what the images are. You'll have copy. You'll have a postcard image, which is one of the designers. You'll have another image of one of the artists and a final image of the other artist. So there's two artists and one designer. So this is the front of it. You'll use all three images and you'll use the Visiting Artist Program Fall 2018. This is the designer's interpretation of this last semester. How do you solve this problem? I wish this was a little bit more bright and more inviting. So think about how you can use color and get someone excited about going to this program. Just remember, you want to excite someone to go to this event. What do you think is exciting? So these are the two asks. In this folder, I'm going to need an InDesign file, and I also want an IDML. IDML is a file that allows you to go to lower versions of InDesign. So if you were in the library and realized that your document from your home isn't opening up in the library, you can create an IDML and open it up in the library. It just needs to be this version so that it allows it to open up in lower versions. This will always be the version that you're using at home. You can always go up, but you can't go back. So it's good practice to learn how to do packaging. But please take notes for this. It's very important that you learn how to package. I think we can move forward on the next step, where you're going to start making sure you download all of the content, the copy, and the images. And please create a folder so once we do package, everything is contained in one folder. I hope you enjoy this. Take notes and take it slow. Take breaks if you need it. Alright, so we talked a little bit about the setup, so hopefully you've already collected your images and put them in the folder. We're going to work on text flow. So I'm going to show you exactly what I want you to build, and I'm going to go through each step to how to build it. I have my resources, so I know where all my images are, and then my copy, which I've clicked on and opened it up in here. Make sure it's opening up in Acrobat Pro DC. I've already finished this project. Like I told you, I made the PDF, and here's kind of what we're looking at. So this was my design. Here's my InDesign file. And that is the inside and the cover. And if I go to W, you can see all of my lines of where everything is breaking. Typically, a brochure or a program will have, if it's a trifold, which is what we're doing, we'll have one side that's a little bit smaller. So it's smaller here and smaller here. But I'm just going to make it easy and make them equal. And I'll show you how I make that equal in the next step. So you're going to go to New, Document. And if you just open up the document, you can go and hit create. And then you'll have the same options we've been seeing for a while. So we're going to go to Print first. We're still going to stay on Letter. We're going to change the units to inches. We're going to write in, this is Program. So again, you're going to be really following me along. Slow down or pause this when you need to kind of look things over. So this might be a point where you would like to pause after I tell you all this so you can make sure you put all the correct numbers in. So this is the correct numbers other than we need to rotate it. So it should be 11 and 8.5. So this is landscape. We're going to do 2 pages like we did for the postcard. And we're going to change facing pages and click that off. We're not going to add columns. I'm going to show you a different way of adding columns in the file. Margins, let's do 25. Make sure you have this linked and not unlinked. Because if you do have it linked, it will automatically do it for all of them. And same with the bleed. Let's do 0.25. And if it's linked, it'll go through all of them. Don't need to worry about slug. Hit create. And this is what your page. The first thing is I'm going to want to go to the master page because I'm going to set up my guidelines. It's very important to put guidelines in to kind of keep everything unified and correct. So the nice thing is that if you don't do it in file, you can always come and create it within layout. So layout still has pages, move or insert masters. It has your margins and columns, rule guides, and create guides. We're going to do create guides. Once you do that, you want to change it to, I'm not going to worry about rows so much. We could put in 3 rows. But more importantly, we are 9 columns. And again, do preview. All right, so hit OK. So because we're going to do this in equal parts, we'll also put in kind of the gutters. So this is where a fold would be, and this would be another fold. So keep in mind, this will be really tight to the gutter if you start your copy. Because we did this, hopefully, on the master, it should automatically be on your page. So make sure that you have an A on your pages. Also remember that we have a gutter here that we're not going to use because we want to make sure we're not that tight of the edge. So we can maybe move this out a little bit on either side. So we're trying to make that same feel of here in with the gutter. Maybe not super precise, but the idea is this would be your fold, and then the rest would be guidelines for where work could be. All right, the nice thing about masters is once you make something on a masters, you can't move it or adjust it on your actual pages. And masters can be moved in more than, so if I added another page, the master would follow with it. All right, so let's start making our type boxes. And the first thing I do is you can either use the type, like I've shown you in the postcard, I think, that you can bring it and then it's ready to be typed. Or sometimes I prefer just using the shape and adding the shapes. It's hard to see where the boxes are, so let's do this other way. And we're gonna first make sure that you've copied all of the type from your PDF. And this is why it's important that it's a PDF in Acrobat Pro. It allows you to copy it. So I'm copying it, and then I'm making sure I'm on type tool. And don't be on the path. Make sure you're just on type tool. And I'm going to fill in the area right here. And then I'm going to do Command V to paste in. If you look right here, there's like a little red square with a plus. If I select it, you've seen this before, we talked about it. It means that there's type that would not fit into the square. So the nice thing about that is if I want to flow type to another square, I can just select it and it'll open up another type. And I'll drag that type box. So that should be all the copy. We still need to kind of play around with the type to get it to fit into the squares. So I'm going to show you one more way of doing it. Like I said, this way is kind of hard to see, but maybe at first you put in the boxes and you can put a little color behind it. Let's do it. And then put the type in the first box. And then if you see, you can select that box. And you can see that the copy actually becomes attached to the pointer. And I go to the top of the next box. And you select that box, and then it becomes that it flows in. So that's another way of doing it. If you notice the other way, it kind of popped automatically to the edge of the paper. This keeps it in line. And then I would just select it to get where we were before with no type. And then I would select it all right now, and I would just automatically change it to Helvetica. And we'll just keep it at regular, and let's bring this down to 10. And we can do optical. So optical is what visually looks correct, and metric is how the actual type designer wants it. I usually like to go optical. If it's a really good typeface, you don't need to, but typically I just start off that way. So it still keeps creeping up with more copy, and I think the best thing to do now is to, you want to get rid of these extra spaces. So that might be a paragraph, so we'll just leave that. Go back to your PDF and see if that is a paragraph. And it was a paragraph. So I'm going to leave that there. We'll typeset everything in a little bit, but right now we're just trying to get some spaces and get everything into a nice. We're already seeing that we have different size type. So now that little box is gone, everything is on the page. So I'm actually going to start out with our basic type size at 9. Now all the titles are on the top. Let's add in our pictures. Square to each bottom. And maybe we line it all the way to the bottom so that we don't. Make sure that we're really following. So this is telling me what's being scaled. So it's 95% smaller than the original size. They must be equal or you're distorting the image. You're making one side larger than the other. These should be equal. If this was at 100, it would warp it. Right, so all the images are in. So take a break, take a stretch. We'll move on to the next spot. The first thing is I stylize one of these sections and then I can use it to fix the rest. So let me show you just on title. So this title, let's, whatever typeface you choose, let's make it bold. And let's increase the size. We have some space to 12. And then let's tab it. So let's do. And then I just want to indent it like a decent indent. So let's just do an inch. It's nice that it's lining up again on my grid, right? It's all about setting up these grids. So the first thing I want to do is, we're talking a little bit about paragraph by the tabbing, and then we have a typeface that we're going to talk about. So first, let's start with a basic paragraph. And I'm just going to add a new one. And we're going to call this title. We're going to call it header, copy header. So there's a lot of things you can do here. We're just going to do some basic stuff. So basic characteristics is that we want to make sure this is whatever typeface you picked within your choices. I'm going to do Helvetica bold. And I think we chose, I'm going to do 14. I think we chose 12 though. Maybe we'll go back. And optical always. We could do all caps if we wanted to. I think we'll stay with that leading. So this is kind of what I would have here. We don't really need this, but we did set a tab. So let's set it here also. So we're saying 1 inch. You can actually change the color and make sure the color is correct. And we want to say OK. Now that is connected to this. So if we do this one, it's not quite hitting our guy, but we're doing it what we set here. If you're getting that plus there, just apply, select the area and apply. Perfect. All right, the next thing is your basic body copy. So we can add new, and then here we do body copy. Here it's called body copy. We're doing Helvetica regular, and then this we will keep it the 8 and 11 leading. Optical is good. Normal case. This is all great. We're not going to do tabbing, and the only other thing is to check that the color is correct. And now, so this is great if like you have a client that you're going to be doing a lot of brochures for them. You can immediately use your style guide. What is character? Well, character kind of gives us a little bit more of, it's this information. So it's still going to be the header, the copy header, but we're making it bold. So this helps you kind of change the format. So we're going to keep it at Helvetica. We're going to keep it, but we're changing it to bold. And we're keeping everything else. So we don't need to add anything else because it's first going to read our paragraph style, and then it'll take any changes that are necessary that we want. It will read then the character. Because I might want only half of this to be bold. Maybe I just want this to be bold, but I want the names to stay regular. I have options. So you set up all your standard stuff under paragraph, and then you can change accordingly to what you need stylistically throughout. So the next thing here is that we're going to have copy here that would possibly have bold. So I would select another, and let's say you want to make sure you have Philadelphia Museum of Art bolded. You would make another style, 2 years, and I would select it and call it body bold, and open it up, and then I'd be able to change it to bold, but I would keep it to that 8 point. So see how it stayed bold? And now if I want to just go in, I can bold anything within the actual paragraph. This will also be when you do italic. So this is a huge component when you are doing publications, that you create these style sheets. So I would say that characters are special characters within the typeface or color. So if it's bold, is it italic, is it red, is it blue, is it black? If their headers are going to change, like here, I would have that available, but then I would keep my paragraph as your constant. So as long as those are the constant, then you just use the characters to change the style. And like I said, it can't tell how helpful it can be until you have like 3 or 4 pages of text that you constantly have to adjust by putting a bold or italic or red or blue or some other. So that is your style sheet. I'll wrap up your style sheets. Forward. All right, just a few more things that we need to cover. I'll talk a little bit more about paragraphs and tabs. We covered tabs pretty much. You learned that you can go under type and hit tabs, and you can sync it. When you are doing tabs, the best thing to do is select everything that's going to possibly be affected. You can see that this one already is affected because it's connected to our copy header. We're going to put one more in, and when we do that, that copy header is going to probably move. So because it's reading this as the first tab,
and then this is the second. And because we didn't have this one highlighted, it's not going to read it as the second. So I just need to hit the tab button on my keyboard one more time to move these over to its original spot, which is right here. So it was reading this one, it's reading. So if I want to tab the copy over for an indent, I would do that. You don't need a space in between if you're doing indent. But indents shouldn't be whatever standard tab button you select when you hit tab. It's a little too large and distracting. You need to set up your tabs when you're using a tab in. Another thing we're going to do is we're just going to go to paragraph. So that's under type is paragraph, and then in paragraph you have all these choices here. But under the hamburger or the multiple lines in the corner, you have other options. And the one thing I don't like is parentheses when you get this going on. Parentheses. We like to get rid of those because it's harder for the reader to read and then read the other portion. And it just looks nicer not to have these weird breaks. To do that, you select it all. You go under type, you go to paragraphs, and if you don't see everything here, you would select open options. And we just want to check that off. So now it makes it that you cannot see those breaks. You want to make sure your type is kind of weaving back and forth when you're doing justify to the left. And sometimes you just need to kind of do some quick editing of tabbing. So A's usually look weird afloat, so if you can just scoot those in, that's good. It looks a little weird when something's hanging so far out. We might let that go. Because you don't want to get into the roller coaster of like having to tab everything over because it won't work very well. Better to have a little gap than to have things disconnected that needs to be disconnected. This is the perfect time to kind of bring in type a little. So if you do it a lot, it's going to affect your type and it's going to look weird. But if you do just a little, sometimes it's this nice lining up of the type without making it look too odd. So this might be able to go up a little bit. Maybe these go a little back. So that's a little bit of way of how you kind of typeset. Should go back. Your type so it has a nice kind of play back and forth. The other way that you can do type that you don't have to worry about that is you can use this one, which is full justify. It takes the type all the way to the edge. The problem with this is it leaves a lot of holes. So there's a big gap in the spaces that kind of become distracting, where this is, the type is all smooth and together in the correct spacing, but we have just a little jagged line. This has gaps in the middle of it. It's fine to use, but then you really have to go in and fix your type so that you have less of these spaces, where you don't have to go in and fix the type, but you need to fix the edge a little bit. So that's the difference between using justified or aligned left. I prefer aligned left. Also, make sure that you never leave copy more than one word. It's called like a widow or an orphan when you leave one letter or one word on the bottom ending a paragraph. Just a little typographic information. The next thing, so we covered paragraphs and tabs. Yay! Alright, so one more video. We'll talk a little bit about glyphs and type wrap, which will be very quick. Alright, we're almost done. Talked a little bit about how to set up a paragraph, how to do your styles. Now let's get into some glyphs and text wrap. So for glyphs, you can find glyphs are characters. These are all the glyphs that make up this typeface. So if you can't find it here, you might be able to find it here. Typically, I use this a lot with punctuation sometimes isn't correct, or when I need to add an umna over a letter for a special word. So it's rare that I grab this, but it's something you should know that exists. So these are all the different type that's available for this typeface. So if I needed to put quotes in, there's certain quotes for quotes, and then there's quotes for number marks. And those sometimes get confusing. The straighter ones are for foots and inches, and the curly Q ones are for quotes. If we go into what my final was, I took this little circle, and to put some color, I used the image. But right now I think I'm just going to grab a little color from the art pieces. Let's get back to the line. It's nice to kind of work within the grid, so we'll change this a little bit and put them, let's start them always in the corner. If I wanted to put it into the first line, let's see what that looks like if I were to use your type wrap. So I have this one as no text type wrap. This is a wrap around, so it just kind of moves over. This one does a better job, so maybe if I place it better. But we have a weird space. So basically it wraps around the object. I don't really feel like it does that good of a job to utilize it, but that's where it is. So this can go directly below it, around it, through it, and this is another wrap around bounding box. And you want to select the object. So this is just a wrap around the objects, and this has got a little bit of a bounding box. So this would be more what we would use, but it still feels tight to the image. But that is where your text wrap is located, right here on the panel. And you'd be on your selection tool, not so much on a type tool. So let's talk about this final part in the back. We want to go back to your copy. The only thing we need on this back cover is this copy. So I would maybe start with your copy header, and then let's go, since we already have it set up, to characters, and let's add bold. Does this get smaller? Does it get larger? How do you fill the space? Remember that where you see 3 lines together is where the fold is, so be careful with that. Are you going to change colors on each panel? So it's really up to you kind of what you want to do with this. The different ways the letters, your paragraphs, and copy can be changed. And then I added the circles again. And I placed the image. But I used the grid as a way to kind of align where I wanted. Increase the size so I have a few big ones and a few little ones. I placed image. I wasn't so worried if you saw it, but just that it had some color to it. And this is something I think that's important, this next move. So I want to get a better part of the image. So I want to kind of hover on it. You have to see that circle that we're seeing right now. It will show me the whole painting. And I can select the part that I want to show. Remember, you can always double click and adjust the size and scale. If something goes wrong, you can always undo. Remember that. That is Command Z to undo. So this is not exactly how I had it at the end, but this is kind of what I started playing around with. And always remember to kind of toggle back with W and your lines and grids so you can kind of get an idea of how this works.